The following podcast contains bizarre theories, strange facts, and some out-of-this-world opinions. Listener discretion is advised, especially if you trust the government. So imagine this, yeah? You're a young woman, ambitious, smart, a bit lost maybe, but eager to find your purpose. You sign up for a women's empowerment workshop, the kind promising to unlock your potential, make you stronger, more confident, more in control of your life. You pay a hefty fee, but it's worth it. After all, they say the program has helped CEOs, actors, entrepreneurs. The coach is charismatic, the group feels warm, you're invited into a more exclusive circle, a secret society for elite women only. You're told to trust, to surrender control, to grow. Then one night, you're blindfolded, held down, and branded on your hip with the initials of a man you've never met. Congratulations, you've just joined NXIVM. Welcome to Conspiracy. Conspiracy. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Conspiracy, the show where no story is too strange, no theory too far-fetched, and no one is safe from our deep dives into the unknown. It's basically your favourite podcast that feels like that weirdly fascinating debate in the pub after a few beers. I'm Ash, your host, your guide into the world of conspiracies, occasional devil's advocate, and as always a professional mystery solver, although that last one is absolutely 1000% self-proclaimed. If you're new around here, welcome. We cover conspiracy theories, weird mysteries, ancient histories, you name it. And we do it whilst having a bit of a laugh. So join me every Wednesday and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find all episodes of Conspiracy for free on Spotify or wherever those little ears of yours listen to my podcasts. And if you want to get in touch, you can reach me on TikTok and Instagram at Conspiracy or via email conspiracy@gmail.com. And please, if you do enjoy the episode, use those tippy-tappy fingers and leave me a review. Seriously, guys. Seriously. Well, today we're tackling one of the most shocking cult stories of the 21st century. It's the story of NXIVM, spelled NXIVM, the so-called self-help company that turned out to be a sex cult, a blackmail machine, and a living case study in how ambition, manipulation, and delusion can twist into something absolutely monstrous. I just do want to give a quick warning. There are some topics coming up and I want to be upfront. This episode deals with some pretty grim stuff, so a trigger warning for the following topics. We're going to be discussing sex trafficking, emotional abuse, coercion, psychological manipulation, and a lot of people doing things you'd hope no rational adult would ever fall for. Just a casual Wednesday. But don't worry, I'll be here to guide you through it. I'll get some humour in there, I'll pull it out my ass. We're going to tear apart the madness and get to the bottom of why humans are so easy to break when someone offers them a gold star and a leadership sash. Definitely going to get into that. So, where are we starting today? This isn't one of those where we can jump around the timeline type of episodes. We've got to tell this chronologically because, trust me, the NXIVM story is wild enough without jumping around. We're going to be covering the rise of Keith Raniere, the nerdy genius turned cult leader, how NXIVM grew from self-help seminars to sex cult power games, the celebrity recruits, billionaire backers and inner circle dynamics, the eventual legal fallout, the FBI raids, courtrooms, prison sentences, and of course, all the bizarre stories along the way, including why branding someone with a cauterizing pen was seen as empowerment. Now, I'm obsessed with this story and it's because this is peak human mess. It's got everything. A guy who claims he's the smartest man alive, women convinced they're on a mission to transform the world, Hollywood actresses going full henchwoman, wealthy socialites bankrolling a cult like it's their side hobby, and a final collapse so dramatic it could, and did, fill documentaries, books and endless internet rabbit holes. And I, being the curious conspiracy nerd that I am, couldn't resist diving into the wreckage. And before we get started, I just want to ask you a question. Have you ever signed up for one of those motivational workshops. Has any of them ever captured you? Because I did once. It was supposed to be about, unleashing your entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah, I left after about 30 minutes because you know what they made us do? No word of a lie, to stare into each other's eyes in silence for a full 5 minutes. Honestly, and the guy across from me, no joke, whispered, "I can feel your financial blockage melting." I was out. I was like, "No, thank you, mate. Go back to whatever the fuck you do. I'm going back to my life. This ain't it. I'm just, no, not for me. Can't deal with that fucking nonsense." Yeah. And if I've got any kind of financial blockage, mate, it's probably called a mortgage. So yeah, you could bet if anyone had tried to get me to sign a lifetime loyalty pledge, I would have legged it straight to the pub, get the fuck out of there. But NXIVM's victims, they didn't run, they stayed. And that's what makes this story really fascinating to me. How smart, ambitious, powerful people got sucked into something so obviously rotten, and how that rot spread all the way to Hollywood, Wall Street, and beyond. Alright, get comfy, pour yourself a drink, maybe pour two, because we're about to follow the rise and fall of NXIVM from its corporate self-help mask to the dark, twisted cult machinery behind the scenes. This is the story of ambition, control, loyalty, and betrayal. This is the story of Keith Raniere and his empire of lies. Let's dive in. So before NXIVM was even a thing, before the FBI raids, before the branding and the blackmail, there was one man at the centre of it all. That is Keith Raniere. And honestly, this guy's origin story is so perfectly cult leader cliche, it's almost funny. Almost. So who was Keith Raniere? Keith Allen Raniere was born on August 26, 1960 in Brooklyn, New York. His dad, James, was a New York City advertising executive, and his mom, Vera, was a ballerina turned dance instructor, but she did struggle with alcoholism. From the outside, they seemed like a normal middle-class family, but inside the home, things were a little bit messier than that. Keith apparently was one of the kids who loved to remind people how smart he was. He reported he could read at the age of 2, he played piano at 3, spoke in full sentences before he started nursery or kindergarten. Honestly, if you ask me, just sounds like a future dinner party nightmare. That guy who just won't shut up. Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. But to Keith, he was a self-proclaimed genius, and this is kind of where the legend of Keith Raniere starts. So he claimed that he could read by the age of 2, he was doing high-level maths by the age of 12, and he had a photographic memory. The problem of all of that, though, is that there's no evidence for most of it. Sure, he was smart, but was he a world-class genius? Who knows? But that didn't matter, because Raniere understood something crucial. If you tell people you're brilliant and you act like you're brilliant, most of them ain't gonna question you. So by the time he hit university, Raniere was marketing himself as a child prodigy. He claimed to have an IQ of 240, which, for context, would make him smarter than Einstein. He was also a member of Mensa, Master of Mathematics, Science, and Philosophy. In interviews, he'd say things like, "I'm one of the smartest people in the world." Now, if that's not a red flag, don't know what it is. But people loved it, especially when, in the late 80s and early 90s, he launched himself into multi-level marketing, MLM for short. This is the world of pyramid schemes disguised as business ventures. So let's discuss those MLM years, aka pyramid schemes. So after graduating from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI, in 1982 with degrees in maths, physics and biology, Raniere drifted through several industries. He worked as a computer programmer, he tried his hand at business consulting, but where he really shined was this multi-level marketing. And if you don't know what multi-level marketing is, or a pyramid scheme, it's basically a system where you recruit people under you, They recruit people under them, and the money flows upwards to the top of the pyramid. So all of the workers are doing all their work down there for the person above them, who's doing the work for the person above them, and all of the members are basically feeding into Raniere. That's a pyramid scheme, right? So in 1990, he founded Consumers Byline. It's a discount shopping network that promised massive savings on products, and it grew rapidly. I'm talking tens of thousands of members, but surprise, surprise, by 1993, the company was under investigation for being a pyramid scheme. So he settled, paid a $40,000 fine, and agreed to stop, but refused to admit any wrongdoing. Classic cult leader move. I'm not wrong, you're just too dumb to understand my brilliance. We see it time and time again. And how do we not spot cult leaders early? Like, there was so many of them popping up back then. It's ridiculous. If you think about it, by the early 1990s, Raniere had already shown a talent for persuasion, love of control, flexible relationship with the truth, and a genius level ability to reinvent himself. But he took a bit of a hit with the MLM, paid the $40,000, but he didn't actually just crawl away, he just pivoted. And this is where we get to 1998, where Raniere co-founded NXIVM, or NXIVM is how it's spelt, but it's pronounced NXIVM. So he founded it with a woman named Nancy Salzman, who was a trained nurse and hypnotherapist. That's a great pairing, isn't it? So this time, they weren't selling discount memberships, they were selling transformation. And we've all heard that word a million and one times. It's literally on every single website now, is it? We transform you, and we transform your business, and we transform your sales, and all this of it. So that's what basically NXIVM promised to do. They promised to unlock your potential to help you achieve executive success. Yeah, literally. That's what they called it, executive success. And they were going to do this through intense workshops, personal development training, and a system called rational inquiry, which basically translates into talk sessions where you deconstruct your emotions and behavior. Kind of sounds a bit like a life coach mixed with a corporate boot camp, and then you sprinkle in some pseudoscience and wrap it in a shiny bow of empowerment. If I had £1 for every cult that starts as a self-help program, I would start my own cult. I'd call it Sit Down and Have a Cup of Tea. Step 1, make tea. Step 2, chill out. Step 3, branding on the skin. So many of them, they all start out the same. I don't know how all of these cults weren't just shut down instantly. How did they manage to just hypnotize all of their members? It's crazy to me. But here's where this gets interesting for NXIVM, because Raniere wasn't just targeting lonely people as cults tend to do. They kind of find people that have a bit of money sitting around, so they can kind of feed into the cult and sell the houses, whatever. But it's usually people who are either very, very hyper-religious or just kind of lost. They have got nowhere to put themselves, so they turn to a leader and someone who's charismatic and can convince them and will probably get members on board. So the difference here with NXIVM is that they wanted high achievers. So they became famous for attracting Hollywood actors. For example, Alison Mack, the actress who's best known for playing Chloe Sullivan from Smallville, who is one of the main perpetrators of the whole thing, by the way. But yeah, I'm going to touch on her a bit later, because also I love Smallville. I think I've watched it 3 times all the way through. Don't judge me. Nerdy moment. But yeah, Smallville is class. Tom Welling should have just stayed in shape and just became actually Superman one time. Now he's too old. It's gone past the it's gone past the sell-by date now. But he was great as young Superman, but could have easily transitioned into actual Superman, in my opinion. Oh, and also the soundtrack of Smallville. Every song that's ever been really, really kind of known by everyone, like, Radiohead's Creep, or Iris Goo Goo Dolls, or, what's that other band called? Oh, fuck. The ones that Rascal Flatts and stuff like that. No, it wasn't Rascal Flatts that I'm talking about. Yeah, probably, no. It's the one that sings, oh, what's that song? It's called You and Me. Ah, You and Me. Oh, I don't know, can't remember. But anyway, soundtrack of Smallville, so good, and the title song, Somebody Save Me. Ah, unbelievable. Anyway, yeah, so Chloe Sullivan from Smallville, aka the real name Alison Mack, was one of the main members of NXIVM, right? But they also attracted, wealthy heirs, like the Bronfman sisters from the Seagram's liquor empire. And then you've got entrepreneurs, doctors, artists. It had this elite, almost exclusive club vibe. So people weren't thinking that they would join in a cult. They were thinking they were joining a network of the world's best and brightest. And they even handed out coloured sashes, literally like you were leveling up in a self-help karate dojo. And the sash system, this is where kind of Keith's genius shows, I guess. NXIVM operated like a mix between self-help seminar, corporate training program, and literally a martial arts camp, right? Members wore coloured sashes to mark their rank. White sash meant newbie, yellow was moving up, orange, green, blue, they all had different meanings. The more stripes you earned, the closer you were to the inner circle. So it became a competitive, hierarchical, and addictive to these people. And, successful people, there is an argument that they suffer from addiction to success. That's why they succeed, because they're just constantly thinking, how can I be better? How can I be the best? So putting them in a type of hierarchical, competitive situation of collecting sashes, you can see why people will be leveling up pretty quickly. But you might be wondering, what do people actually do in NXIVM? Well, the workshops were intense. Members were taught to question their beliefs, break down their emotional barriers, and push through some shame, guilt, and fear. So when you think about that on paper, it's not that terrible of advice to, get past those things, right? But in practice, the sessions involved public humiliation, sleep deprivation, endless tasks, and a constant atmosphere of, if you fail, it's your fault, because you're not trying hard enough. Members were expected to work hard, for free, recruit others, pay for endless new courses, and stay loyal to the group and to the group only. Which is a mad thing to think about, wealthy and famous people being sucked into this. Like, it's crazy. But I think it all comes down to Raniere's charisma. He had all the charisma in the world, as most cult leaders always tend to do. He didn't act like this flashy guru. He dressed casually. He played volleyball. Weirdly, he played volleyball a lot, apparently. He also claimed he was humble, even quite shy. He'd have these long philosophical talks with followers late into the night. He'd ask deep, probing questions about their lives, make them feel like he saw something special in them. And before they knew it, they were in too deep. They were financially tied in, emotionally invested, and psychologically rewired to believe Keith Raniere is the key to my transformation. And that is how it begins. Not with blackmail, not with branding, not with forced starvation or locked rooms, because that is coming, but it begins with people wanting to be better and someone pretending that they know how to make that happen. Alright, so here's where NXIVM's public image and its true inner workings split apart. Because on the surface, you had a corporate style self-help group, sashes, seminars, life coaching, leadership workshops. But behind closed doors, you had something called DOS. So what the hell is DOS? Well, Around 2015, things escalated. That's when Keith Raniere created something called DOS, Dominus Obsequious Sororium, which translates to Master over Slave Women. Yeah. On the outside, it was sold as a secret woman's empowerment sorority, but in reality, it was a blackmail feud coercive system designed to funnel women into complete submission to Keith. So here's how DOS works. I'll walk you through the steps. So step 1 is recruitment. So trusted women, often top-level NXIVM members like Alison Mack, Chloe Sullivan from Smallville that I mentioned before, would approach female recruits, right? And she'd say things like, "We've seen your dedication, we think you're ready for something more, a private circle of elite women focused on discipline and strength." But you weren't allowed to know who ran NXIVM. Recruiters were telling people, you have to join blindly, you have to trust. That was it. That's all they could say to get people joining NXIVM. Then, step 2 was collateral. So, before joining, you actually had to hand over collateral. Essentially, blackmail material. Things like nude photos, written confessions of embarrassing secrets, and damaging financial or personal information. The recruiters would tell them it's just a safeguard so no one reveals the secrets of the group. But in reality, it's just a leash. If you left, they could ruin your life. Which is so weird to me that people were not just like, yeah, I'm good with that actually. Like, that sounds a bit dodgy. Like, imagine just joining a book club and they're like, "Oh, cool, but before we start reading the book, can you send me some nudes and all your bank passwords?" Like, what's going on? You definitely would not do that. No rational person would do that. Like, it's great, especially if you got something to, like, a lot to lose, like a business or your career or, you know, your fame and fortunes. Would you really give that over? Well, apparently they did, so, I mean, and those who did, let's move on to step 3, because this is fucking crazy, but it's called the branding ceremony. So, this is the part that actually blew the whole story wide open. So, women were brought to secret gatherings, told they were participating in a sacred initiation. They were blindfolded, restrained, and held down, and then a cauterized pen was used to burn a symbol into their flesh, specifically on the pelvic area. The women were told the symbol was a combination of the 4 elements, a symbol of strength and sisterhood. What it actually was? It's Keith Raniere's initials, KR. I shouldn't laugh, it's not that funny, but Keith literally branded women like cattle and convinced them it was empowerment. I mean, if you ever need proof that psychological manipulation works, there's pretty much it. I mean, we are living all under the government who do this thing every single day, just without the branding on the skin. But, you know, anyway, let's move on to step 4, because that is the control stage. So once you've been branded, women were expected to obey commands from their master, recruit new members and become masters themselves, stick to extreme diet restrictions. Some were actually limited to 500 to 800 calories a day maximum, and they had to report their whereabouts constantly, ask for permission, things like what to eat, when to sleep, who to see, and this all fit under the umbrella of, this is how you grow, this is how you become stronger. But ultimately, it all fed back to good old Keith. The inner circle, the recruits, the slaves, they were all under his thumb. He was the puppet master. When you look at it on paper, this is literally just another pyramid scheme, just a really fucked up sex cult branding one, I guess. But, you know, he let the women enforce the system on themselves. Masters controlled slaves, slaves recruited more slaves, and then Keith sat at the top, rarely seen, and just running the thing. The revered genius behind it all. It is crazy to think that this actually worked, and it worked for a long time. So, I guess one thing we can look at is, why did people choose to stay? Because it's easy for us to kind of judge from the outside and be like, just leave. I mean, I do understand that aspect of things, that there's more to it. It's psychological, it's manipulation, and that cult dynamics are powerful. They're really, really strong. And, Keith used all the textbook classics, right? He used the emotional manipulation, the peer pressure, blackmail, financial dependency, and delivering this constant message of, without us, you're nothing. So I guess people would stay because they were isolated, I guess. And that maybe if they were convinced that if they left, it would destroy them. And I guess because by the time they would see the truth, they were already too deep to imagine any kind of escape, because, yeah, their lives would be ruined. But it is crazy. Man, I'd love to start a cult. I would love to start a cult. That'd be so... If anyone wants to join a cult, holler at me. It'd be a great cult. None of this weird shit. Just be a really fun time. That's how it always starts. Trust me, just a fun time. I'm just going to empower you. No, but seriously, I would love to have a cult. I think I'd be a good cult leader. What would make a good cult leader, actually? I guess the best thing to make a good cult leader is to get away with it. What do you guys think? What makes a good cult leader? Let me know in the comments. And, perfect. Well, talking about getting away with it, well, this is how Keith actually did get away with it, because he didn't just manipulate individuals, he manipulated the entire system, right? He convinced women they were responsible for their own suffering. If they complained, it was because they were weak. He built layers of loyalty and secrecy. Women reported to masters above them, who reported to masters above them, and it all went up to Keith. He also rewired morality, teaching that pain was growth, obedience was freedom, and surrender was power. And it just reminds me, it really does, it reminds me of this one time when I went to a yoga class, right? I thought, fuck it, let's go and do some yoga, see what the hype is about. It's a fucking downward dog, whatever the fuck they call it. So anyway, I was there, newbie, sat there, just getting used to all the fucking positions and the stretches or whatever. And I remember the instructor was telling us, pain is just weakness leaving the body. I was just kind of like, I don't know if you've ever done yoga, but it's fucking painful. Especially the first time, right? Because we're not used to stretching like that. Like, all these yoga moms have been doing it for the last 30 years. They're absolutely flexible as shit. So, that's the real reason I went, to be honest. But yeah, he just kept saying, pain will leave your body, pain's weakness, it will leave your body. And I'm like, I kind of fuck with that mentality. But after 15 minutes of trying to do these stretches, my hamstring was absolutely in dire straits. Like, it was literally, I was like, actually, mate, pain is my tendon ripping in half right now. It's not leaving the body, it is the body, and my hamstring's about to give way. So I'm done for today. Thank you for this yoga class. I don't think you need to surrender your sanity to prove your worth. I just bowed out. Yeah, thanks for the stretches, yoga moms. Been a good 15 minutes. But yeah, maybe I should try yoga again. Yeah, I don't really have the patience for it. Like the whole hums and the hold the stretch and be one with your body, and yeah. I'm not into it. But people who are into nexium are some celebrity enablers. So let's talk about the inner circle. Some of his inner circle, anyway. They included Alison Mack. I'm just going to keep talking about it because it is Chloe Sullivan from Smallville, and it really stresses me out because she was one of my least favourite characters of the whole Smallville anyway. She's always a bit weird, massive mouth on her, and just knew there was something off from the moment I saw her on the screen as a 12-year-old. But she was beloved though. People absolutely fucked with Alison Mack. But yeah, she actually turned into the cult enforcer. Like, she was one of the top dogs of NXIVM. She was actively recruiting women non-stop. It's crazy. Because she looks like a bit of a plain Jane, to be honest. She don't look like she's part of some sex cult. It's crazy. Anyway, also, you've got Lauren Salzman. So she's the daughter of Nancy Salzman, who was the co-founder of NXIVM. So she was both a victim and perpetrator, because she was brought in and subjected to all of that through her mother. That's crazy. So she was kind of torn, I guess, between the loyalty to mother and the complicity to being in this cult. This is so weird. How would you bring your daughter into something like this? Also, you got Claire and Sarah Bronfman. These are the heiresses to the Seagram's liquor fortune. So they poured millions into NXIVM. They funded legal attacks on whistleblowers and also boosted up Keith's empire. As you can see, these weren't just kind of like fringe weirdos, like, oh, let's join a sex cult and recruit other people and just be like really evil and all the rest of it. That's a mix of like celebrities, billionaires, highly educated women, which always brings me back to the same question, no matter how much research I do on it, no matter how I try and rationalize it. Always get the same question in my head. How does someone like Keith Raniere manage to bend these powerful people to his will? And also, the follow-up question I always come back to is, does he have a masterclass on it? Because it's pretty impressive. You take away all the doom and the gloom and how terrible it was, what was happening, and branding and all the rest of it. It is impressive to bend powerful people to his will. Because I can kind of understand taking, lonely people, vulnerable people who, don't really have much to hold on to, so they're just kind of looking to grasp anything. I kind of get that, I understand that, but people with careers and fame and fortune, it is impressive, I have to say. But by 2017, cracks began to form. Women like Sarah Edmondson, a high-ranking DOS member, escaped and went public. The media picked up the story. The New York Times ran an explosive expose. Law enforcement finally took notice. And Keith, well, he did what all great cult leaders do when the heat's on. He fled to Mexico. So by the time NXIVM hit the mid-2010s, the cracks were everywhere. Behind the polished seminars, the expensive workshops, and the culty grins of people in coloured sashes, something was breaking. And like all good collapses, it started from within. So let me walk you through it. So inside NXIVM, not everyone was blind. Some of the women inside DOS, even some top-ranking loyal members, were starting to realise that this is not empowerment, this is control, this is abuse. And one of the most famous early whistleblowers was Sarah Edmondson, a Canadian actress, high-ranking NXIVM member, and one of the first to blow the lid off the branding ceremonies. Sarah had been drawn in for years. She'd worn the sashes, led the workshops, brought in new recruits. But when she joined DOS, something snapped. So here's what Sarah described about the branding story. She was told she was joining an exclusive women's empowerment circle. She was told to bring that collateral, the nude photos, confessionals, personal secrets, to prove her loyalty. She was blindfolded and taken to a private home where other women were waiting. She was ordered to strip naked and lie on a table. A cauterized pen was heated up, and then, without anesthesia, without explanation, the mark was burned onto her hip. She was told the symbol represented the elements, but when she got home and looked in the mirror, she realised that it was Keith Raniere's initials. So at that moment, she realised this is not a bonding exercise, this is not empowerment, this is literal physical ownership, and this broke Sarah. She and her husband, who was also a former NXIVM member, fled, and they went public. In October 2017, the New York Times ran an expose titled "Inside a Secretive Group Where Women Are Branded." The article wasn't vague, it named names, it showed photos, it quoted survivors, and suddenly, NXIVM was no longer a niche cult, it was a front-page scandal. Reporters swarmed, lawyers circled, government investigators perked up. And that is when Keith fled to Mexico, specifically to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, where he holed up in a luxury villa with his remaining loyalists, including, you guessed it, Chloe Sullivan, Alison Mack. So what was he doing there? So he was still running NXIVM remotely, still issuing commands, still promising his followers it was all a smear campaign, that the media had it wrong, that the sisterhood was sacred. I mean, I don't know how sacred the sisterhood is, because blackmail branding, 800-calorie diets, even if you say namaste at the end, it's just, it's fucked up. So I don't know, that's just another manipulation tactic. But eventually the FBI caught up and they worked with the Mexican authorities to track Keith down. And when they raided the villa, they found the great and powerful Vanguard hiding in a closet. Literal closet. The man who claimed to be the smartest human alive, the enlightened genius, the master of rationality and leadership, was curled up behind some jackets. Chef's kiss. So the arrest begins, right? Keith was dragged back to the US and the dominoes fell hard. Federal prosecutors unsealed indictments against Alison Mack, Claire Bronfman, Nancy Salzman, Laura Salzman, and guess what they all did? One by one, they flipped. They took plea deals. They testified against Keith, so the sisterhood was gone. Keith's trial in 2019 was brutal. Over 6 weeks, the court heard detailed survivor testimonies about the branding, accounts of starvation diets, sleep deprivation, and psychological abuse, reports of Keith controlling the pregnancies and relationships of his followers, evidence of child pornography involving an underage DOS victim. And Keith, he sat there, smiling, taking notes, sometimes turning to his dwindling band of supporters in the gallery. Even as the walls closed in, he insisted, "I did nothing wrong. This was all about growth and consent." Which is completely ironic when you think he was branding people whilst they were blindfolded, and that wasn't consensual, was it? So yeah, he's literally textbook cult leader. Everything about him. He gives off Manson vibes. He gives off Jones vibes. He's literally the same. He's read the book. He's become those people, and he's just kind of so far gone that you can't see what he's done wrong. But the people who did see what he did wrong was the jury. So in June 2019, the jury came back guilty on all counts, including racketeering, sex trafficking, forced labour conspiracy, wire fraud, and sexual exploitation of a child. And in October 2020, Keith Raniere was sentenced to 120 years in prison. Basically, you ain't ever coming out. So what happened to everyone else? Alison Mack pled guilty to racketeering and was sentenced to 3 years. Claire Bronfman pled guilty to conspiracy charges and sentenced to 6 years. Nancy Salzman pled guilty, sentenced to over 3 years. Lauren Salzman also pled guilty but got probation after cooperating. The cult was shattered. The brand, both literally and figuratively, was ruined. But NXIVM didn't just fade away into obscurity. It became a Netflix docuseries called The Vow, a Stars documentary called Seduced. It's been the topic on late night talk shows, true crime podcasts, internet forums, and episode 23 of Conspiracy. The survivors, especially the women who spoke out, risking public shaming, lawsuits, and personal threats, became heroes. They showed the world that even the most polished, well-funded cults can be taken down. And I think it's important. I think it's important to raise awareness of what NXIVM is. There's plenty of more information that you can find online in terms of survivors and their kind of accounts if you want to hear about that. I didn't really want to go too much into it because I kind of wanted to keep it on a level of like just telling you about the cult who ran it and the conspiracies that surround it, which we are going to get into in a little bit. So if you do want any more information in terms of kind of survivor stories, you can definitely find those online. Just give it a Google. But I think for the sake of this episode, it's important to talk about why nexium matters in the world, because it shows how smart people can fall for terrible, terrible things and ideas, how power can warp a self-help movement into an abuse machine, and charisma plus structure plus isolation can make almost anyone vulnerable. And I've been saying this for years. All of this kind of self-help, self-progress, me, is the perfect way to get people to only think about themselves, their own progress, their own growth, and their own way of thinking, and their own success, and their own money. And there's a reason why this world has the most popular phone, and it's called an iPhone. Me. And the self-help movement that has happened over the last 10, 15 years is all a driver into getting you into being just you in your bubble. I only care about me, don't care about anyone else, don't care about my community, don't care about my neighbours. Literally, this is, again, it's my opinion, it's my kind of own little conspiracy, but this has been a pre-planned way to get everyone to stop working collaboratively and together. And they've done it in a way that makes you feel like if you don't do self-help or self-improvement and all the rest of it, that you are going to be left behind, that you are not a good speaker or not a good communicator, or, oh, I need to do a self-help course about how to become a better salesman or whatever. You can do that amongst a team. You can do that amongst, many other aspects of life, or just collaborating and talking to others and accepting criticism. That's another massive thing. Self-help and all this stuff, it really, really triggers you into not accepting criticism. Teaches you to be like, okay, that thing that I did was wrong, but I'm going to write 7 paragraphs about how I can improve that thing. Rather than, oh no, how about what is the underlying cause of what makes me do that? That, for me, is way more important. Understanding yourself and allowing other people to see you and to judge you. And I think that kind of opens your mind more into kind of like how you're perceived to other people, because this movement has made us all think like, well, I don't really care what anyone else thinks because I'm improving myself. How do you learn? How do you learn if you don't take criticism? Like, it's crazy. I don't understand it. Like, when you're at school, you learn how to write because you write over and over and over again, and someone tells you did it wrong, so then you have to do it again. If you say 2 + 2 is 5, your teacher says, no, it's 4, and you do it again until you get it right. Now, it's kind of like, well, I know I acted that way the other day, but, I'm going to work on that. I'll put that in my journal, and I'll come back to that. Rather than go, okay, how did that affect someone else, the way that I acted? How is that perceived? Yeah, I've gone on a massive rant there about self-help, but yeah, I just can't stand this movement that's become so ugly, it's so fake. It's so like, it's like these people who are like, I'm going to help you improve you and become better thing, but also here's my £300 course, or join my life coach session, or here's my book, download my... It's all a plug to get you to buy something, but it's so damaging in the meantime and making you so restricted to who you are and not giving a fuck about anyone else. Yeah, okay, I need to stop because I could literally go on for hours about this shit. Let's get back to the story. What's Keith Raniere up to now? Well, he sits in a federal prison in Arizona. No sashes, no followers, no volleyball games, Just another convicted predator serving a sentence that will outlast his lifetime. But the damage he caused, that will take years, maybe decades, to untangle. Alright guys, so we've covered the official story, the rise, the cult, the branding, the collapse and the prison sentences, but you and I both know no real conspiracy episode stops at what's in the court records, because lurking underneath the NXIVM story are the rumours, the connections and the theories, the things whispered on forums, debated in the dark corners of Reddit and hinted at by insiders who may know more than they can say. Let's break them down. So theory number 1 is that NXIVM was a global trafficking pipeline. One of the most persistent conspiracies is that NXIVM wasn't just an isolated sex cult, it was part of a larger international trafficking network. And here's why people believe that. NXIVM had connections in Mexico, Canada and Europe. They reportedly recruited teenage girls from Mexico to serve Keith Raniere, some allegedly brought across borders illegally. High-level members like the Bronfman sisters had ties to elite circles, international businesses and offshore accounts, and also Keith was obsessed with building loyalty networks, not just personal, but financial, political and global. Some would argue, what if NXIVM was just one node in a bigger web? What if Raniere was supplying girls not just for himself, but for powerful clients? Maybe, Epstein? Could be a connection, could be. Honestly, at this point, if an elite organisation doesn't have a secret sex cult, it's time to start thinking they're probably the weird ones. Let's move on to theory number 2, political cover-ups and untouchable clients. Another theory says that the NXIVM trials were deliberately narrow. Sure, they got Keith, Alison Clare and the top lieutenants, but what about the politicians NXIVM tried to cozy up to? The celebrities who dabbled on the fringes, the wealthy donors and business people who never got named? Some theorists believe the US justice system cut off the investigation at the top tier so that no higher connections were exposed. For example, NXIVM reportedly donated to political campaigns including both Democrats and Republicans. They allegedly courted Mexican political families, and there were whispers of Hollywood producers, finance moguls and tech leaders attending events. But none of those names appeared in court. Suspiciously convenient. Theory number 3, mind control experiments. Let's put on a tinfoil hat and dive in. So some theorists point to NXIVM's obsession with psychological manipulation, hypnosis techniques and behavioural experiments on followers. They argue, what if NXIVM wasn't just a private cult? What if it was a testing ground for private or even government-backed experiments on mass influence, social control and psychological domination? Now, does sound a bit like MK Ultra territory, but NXIVM ran bizarre human potential experiments, reportedly tracking members' emotional reactions. They invested in tech projects involving brainwave monitoring. They also had access to wealthy backers who could fund research off the books. So could Keith have been running more than just a cult? Could he have been supplying data or even techniques to interested third parties? We don't know that one, but the idea does refuse to die. Theory number 4, did NXIVM have more victims? So here's one of the darker questions. Did we ever hear the full scope? We do know that the official trial covered a handful of victims, the branding stories focused on a few high-profile women, and the charges were limited by what the FBI could prove. But inside NXIVM, the structure ran deep. There were hundreds of members, multiple inner circles, and entire subgroups we never learned anything about. Some former insiders claim there were more victims, more layers of abuse, and possibly crimes that never came to light. And with Keith in prison, there's little incentive for law enforcement to keep digging, so maybe we'll never know the answers. Theory number 5 is who's still out there. NXIVM may be dead, but some loyalists still defend Keith publicly. Some recruiters and enforcers never face charges, and some ex-members vanish quietly, blending back into other industries. What if NXIVM's methods are being rebranded? Other groups are popping up using similar techniques. And does the cult spirit survive? even if the brand is buried. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was another one that popped up, because you know what they say about a successful business or anything successful? If you've got a successful, let's say, barbershop, you open another barbershop right next door because you can poach the customers. So can imagine there's probably a startup out there called Empower Co. running weekend workshops that are just NXIVM with nicer fonts, for sure. Look, I can't really tell you how much of this is real in terms of the theories, but here's what we do know after today's episode. Keith Raniere was a master manipulator. He built global networks. He exploited power, money, and influence at every level. And even after the court cases, we only scratched the surface. So yeah, I'm not saying the conspiracy theories are all true, but I am saying the story of NXIVM doesn't seem to be over. And you can bet there are still people out there, still hiding secrets, and still hoping we stop asking questions. So what do I think? Here's my personal take. NXIVM is a perfect storm. You've got a charismatic, if slightly creepy, leader, a system that promised elite success just for following the rules, and a structure designed to trap people slowly, so by the time they realised they were in too deep, it was already too late. And, I think in my opinion, NXIVM isn't that unique. It is unique in terms of kind of the elite people and whatever, but it's really not that unique in terms of the structure and the way that cults work. There are so many groups out there, from fitness cults to business coaching scams to crypto bro circles to bizarre MLM health schemes, all using that same psychological playbook. The only difference here is that Keith got caught, to be honest. And even now, there are probably a dozen little mini NXIVMs bubbling away in someone's basement Zoom seminar. And again, I'm going to come back to the same question. How the fuck do these people fall for that? Like, I'm stubborn as hell. You could never get me to join a cult because I don't even fuck with group chats. Like, the minute someone tells me, you need to check in with your accountability master, yeah, I'm out. I'm out of there. The only master I answer to is me. Like, I just couldn't. Absolutely not. So do I think NXIVM was part of a bigger global trafficking network? Do I think politicians and elites were protected? Do I think that there's still a hidden cell operating today? Yes, probably, to be honest, yeah. But I don't have the smoking gun. But after spending the last week buried in this story, one thing is clear. We only know what we're allowed to know, guys. There are layers here. There's political, legal, financial, that have probably never seen the light of day. And that's the most unsettling part, because NXIVM wasn't just a sex cult, it's a system of power, and power doesn't disappear just because one man goes to prison. So that's what I think. But what do you think? I want to hear from you. Do you think NXIVM was a standalone cult? Do you believe the conspiracies about global trafficking or political protection? And do you know anyone who's been caught up in something similar? As always, you can respond to those questions, or if you've got your own theories or stories, you can drop me a DM or message on socials. Get involved in the comments on Spotify or YouTube. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Conspiracy, or email me conspiracy@gmail.com. So go ahead, drop the first comment and get the conversation started. Conspiracy. This has been Conspiracy. I've been Ash, and if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share it with your mates, and leave us a review. And until next time, keep asking questions, keep digging, and remember, the truth is out there.